So, if you guys remember a week or so back, I did this thing called a Warhammer AU called the Zuko Heresy. Basically replacing a lot of the Primarch characters, and replacing them with characters from different shows and anime. So, yes, this is how my mind works. You just gotta roll with it. And I did do... When I was doing the Zuko Heresy, I talked about like Zuko and the foundation for, because Zuko in here is our Horus. He's our he's the Horus of this whole story. So in here, basically, what this is about is basically, like I said, taking those characters and putting them and replacing the Primarchs with different characters. Kind of like the Primarch Korra storyline, which I should get back to at some point. I've been meaning to end that story for a while. I need to like finally wrap it up, but before we go into the full the full heresy itself, I thought I'd talk about the Primarchs and how they kind of differ from the characters they're based off of. Now, they are, like, representing those characters and taking on those roles, but they also are some differences, because, again, it's an AU. Also, none of this is canon, so we're all just here to have fun. Like, yeah, don't worry, none of this is canon, and it's all it's fanfiction. It's just bullshit. It's really bullshit. That's really what it is. Anyway, so like I talked about, Horus is our Zuko, and we talked about his origin in the first part, but we're going to talk about the other Primarchs and who they, what they are with their chapter and what they are. So to remind everyone, I got the cast list right here. Of course, we talked about Zuko is Horus. We have Arrow from Stormhawks, who is our Gilliman. We have Hunter from Owl House, who is our Russ. We have Bakugo taking on the role of Angron. We have Levi from Attack on Titan taking on the role of Rogel. We have Enrico Maxwell taking on the role of Lorgar. We have Light from Death Note taking on the role of Conrad. We have both Dipper and Mabel from Gravity Falls taking on the roles of Alpharius and Omegon. We have Alucard from Castlevania taking on the role of Sanguinius. We have Sasha from Amphibia taking on the role of Lion. We have Marcy, also from Amphibia, taking on the role of Magnus. We have Crow from Ruby taking on the role of Corvus. Sokka from Avatar is our Jagatai. We have Cyclonus from Stormhawks as our Fulgrim. We have Luz from Owl House as our Vulcan. Hazel from Ruby is our Mortarion. Starling from Stormhawks is our Ferrus Manus. And Perturabo's role has gone to Ironwood from also Ruby. So we're going to talk a bit about them in a lot of and how they. This is just kind of like a cool like fill in the blank kind of thing. So starting off, let's talk about Arrow, who's our Gilliman. So in this continuity, essentially what happened is that he did go to Macragge, but the difference was that he wasn't found by Conor Gilliman. He was found by Lightning, who in this continuity is like, because they do kind of in the original show, they kind of allude a lot to him being Arrow's father. So we're just going to make it that Lightning, was his father. And in here, he wasn't a politician. Lightning was a general for Macragge, but he was also like trying to be an elected politician in his own right. So he instilled his adopted son with a lot of like codes and ethics and things like that. And Arrow became like a man of the people. He did become a fighter, a warrior in his own right, but he also he saw that he was more of a senator than anything else. Like he viewed himself as more of a as a man of as a senator. So when the Emperor finally found him, he was like, "Oh yeah, I know you, but also like you're not my father. My father, died fighting for the people and all of that. And if you can guarantee me that, I'll go with you." So. Yeah. Also, the other thing is that, the Emperor and Malkador are still Emperor and Malkador, and given a few differences, the Space Marines are still Space Marines. But the reason why in this continuity the Emperor made sons and daughters, made Primarchs both men and women, is like, again, we're kind of taking that whole thing of like what Malkador mentioned is like, when I tried to convince your father to make you all women. And in here, he makes that same discussion, and in here, the Emperor was like, what if I made half of them women? Like, what if what would that be like if I made, sons and daughters? Would they be more agreeable now that there's, like, different, genders in the room? So, Arrow, like I said, he's our Gilliman, and when he finds the Ultramarines again, he basically is like, oh, shit, I have an army now. And he instills the all of the things he learned, all of the teachings from Lightning and everything else, and he becomes their their proper Primarch. Then we have moving on to, let's actually go to the opposite end of that spectrum and talk about Cyclonus, our Fulgrim. In here, she did land on Chemos, but in here she basically was almost sold. She was basically sold for food because Chemos really sucks. So in here, she was sold, but she was taken in by a family who lost all of their kids, and in here she was raised to be she was basically raised by a family who was better off. So in here, she was kind of given this level of elitism, but also she was adored by her family and adored by people around her because she was always kind of advocating change and whatnot. But there was always kind of this underbelly of, if they love me, they won't turn against me. Like, they won't try to, like, fight against me. If they love me, then there's, they don't have, they will never turn against me. It's better to be loved than feared. But that fear can also be used. So eventually, she is found by the Emperor. She gets taken back and encounters the Emperor's children. And in here, also, unlike Fulgrim, Cyclonus is a psyker. She's basically capable of using her psyker abilities, and it's also kind of like, I want to also infer that, like, her psyker abilities have this ability to kind of alter your perception of her, like, kind of like make her like it's easier to she can't use it on her brothers and sisters, but she can use it on the masses. Like, she can use her psyker abilities to kind of influence the masses to, like, be a little more susceptible to her. So yeah, so when she joins up, she's when she joins them and encounters the Emperor's children again, she's just kind of like, well, we are going to strive for nothing short of perfection in the name of the Emperor and all of that, because she got the smallest legion. Next up, we have let's talk about Hazel. Hazel in here, like I said, he's our Mortarion. He was a child soldier. He wasn't raised by the Pale King. He was just raised on this planet to be a warrior. He was raised to be a child soldier in the Pale King's army until he decided to rise up and fight against his master. Not his adopted father, his master. Until the Emperor showed up, killed the guy, and was like, oh, we're going. So there's a bit of a resentment there. Following that, let's actually talk about Sokka, who's our Jagatai. In here, Sokka was raised on Jagatai's homeworld, and he was also raised with a family. He was discovered by Hakoda, and he was trained in swordsmanship. He was trained in horseback riding, and he was raised with a family. He had Katara as his sister, his adopted sister, and he grew to be the leader of the tribe and everything else. He even would have Suki as his wife, but the problem was that he aged a lot as a Primarch. He aged a lot slower. And then when he encountered, the Emperor, he was like, all right, I'm going to go with you, and hopefully I can do good. Because he understood, it's not like with Cyclonus, who would take husbands and wives and just kind of not and stop caring. Sokka understands that, like, I'm not normal. Like, I'm not human like them. But I can carry the ideas and the ideals they had bestowed upon me and bring that to the galaxy and protect others. So I have a purpose, and that is protecting others. Let's talk about Alucard, our Sanguinius. In here, and also, like, one of the reasons why I was like, oh, vampire connection, and also that I always kind of imagine that voice actor for Alucard as like the voice of Sanguinius whenever I read a novel with him in it. So Alucard in here, he's not known as the angel. He's known as the divine bat. He grew up, rather than have big angel wings, he had like these huge bat wings behind him. But he was very like ornate and still beautiful. And people like first saw, when he first arrived on the world, they saw him as like this horrible creature. But as he grew to have like this beauty to him and like this influence. Not like Cyclonus, who was using psyker abilities to like alter people. It was more along the lines of, well, I'm, very personable and I know I look scary, but let's have a conversation. So when the Emperor found Alucard, he was just like, can you? And the other thing is, in here, Alucard still has that defect that he's the one that causes the defect. It's not like a genetic defect in the Blood Angels. It's something they got from him. And even the Emperor was like, out of all, like, you were clear, like, I kind of made some mistakes with you. And I demand perfection, but it seems like you still got shit done. So, let's, you come with me. And he's like, yeah, your sons are like a bunch of bloodthirsty warriors. They need to find their father again. So Alucard goes with him. Levi, our Rogel. In here, it's not too much different from Rogel. In here, but Levi is more of a take charge kind of character. He's more of a, rather than stand on the, build these great fortresses, which he does. He's also, Levi and the Imperial Fists are very, like, they're going to get hands-on as well. Like, they're going to be at the front lines at every other combat, in every other situation. Bakugo, our Angron. In here, he did land on Nuceria. He did become a gladiator, but the difference was that he was capable. His body's basically incapable of creating explosions. Like, he's just it's like a buildup of rage and energy within him, and he just unleashes it in spouts of rage. And that's actually led to him killing both friends and High Riders, and it's driven him even further into anger and this disparity with the Emperor. Then we have Sasha, who like I said, is our lion. And in here, she was the first creation of the Emperor. She was, of course, the first Primarch. So, with her, that was the first thing. Like when the Emperor was like making all of his sons and daughters in this continuity, he like when Malkador made that thing, he was like, well, why don't you make some of them women? And the Emperor was like, let's see what happens. So he created Sasha first. His first child was the daughter. She basically is the eldest daughter of the Emperor. And when she landed on Caliban, she raised herself. Like, Caliban's a horrible planet to live on, but she grew up and trained herself as like a knight. And eventually, when the Emperor found her, she instilled those kind of levels of chivalry as well as like forms of deception that she learned on Caliban to her sons, the Dark Angels. That's the other thing that I don't think I mentioned earlier, is that there are no female Space Marines there's still no female Space Marines. Yeah, there's female Primarchs in this continuity, but the Emperor's not an idiot. He's like, I'm not going to let... Yeah, I created the Primarchs as daughter. I created sons and daughters, but I also know I don't want to have a race of super people. So the Primarchs aren't going to be able to find anyone to like be able to breed with and have kids. But I don't want that same for their genetic, their soldiers. So it's all still sons. So when a female Primarch encounters her sons, like Sasha encounters the Dark, reunites with the Dark Angels, she's just kind of like, you will refer to me as Sir. You will not refer to me as Mother. You will not refer to me as, you will refer to me as Commander, my Lord, or Sir. None of this mother shit. Whereas opposed to her sisters in this continuity, our Vulcan Luz, when she gets found and reunites the salamanders, they like kneel to her, and she's like, none of you have to bow to me. So she bows before them, and they are, and they're like, wow, our mother's awesome. And she's like, yeah, I like that mother. Because in this continuity, I'm just kidding if I said Vulcan, Luz did land on Nocturne. She was raised by a simple, by Camilla, her adopted mother. And she was raised in this community full of monsters that constantly attacked their world. But in here, it also Nocturne also lived under a dictatorship of Belos. So when Luz was old enough, she actually grew into her size and her strength, and eventually led a rebellion that killed Belos, a successful one as opposed to everyone else. Then we have Crow in here, he's not too dissimilar from Corvus, so yeah. We also have Starling, is when she she did kill that Necron being and got her cybernetic hands, but she was also a lot more she also had a lot more emotion for things. Like, she was a lot more willing to talk about problems, whereas her sons, the Iron Hands, are they're all about logic. And Starling is also you have to apply your emotions with your logic. You can't be one or the other. She also does strike up a friendship with her younger sister, Cyclonus. The two actually make swords for one another, and they're like, "Damn, this sword is bad as fuck. No, your sword's bad as fuck. No, you clearly made the better sword." Of course, if you understand how this is gonna go, yeah. Light is our Conrad, like I said, and Light in here. Light was actually raised on Nostromo by a family. He wasn't left as an orphan. He was actually, in this continuity, raised in a family, but he was also imbued in this family with a sense of, dark justice. They basically raised him to be there's only one, this planet is awful, and you clearly have a gift, so you need to be, more than what you are. You have to be this great warrior. You have to go and right the wrongs one day. So he basically got a god complex from his family hyping him up. And he also didn't care much for his sons, but he saw them more as unlike Conrad, who saw them as a burden and didn't want anything to do with them, he saw them more as alright, you guys are more of means to an end, but I am not your father. I am your gene sire and your lord. As for others, we have Marcy, who in here, when she was basically raised she had an understand, she already was incredibly intelligent, and was oh yeah, there's some godlike being who created me and all that, but she was basically raised to, look beyond the stars and look out into the galaxy. And peer into wanting to peer more into the void, which of course is not a good thing. I've talked about Dipper and Mabel, who I talked a bit about them. Enrico Maxwell, our Lorgar, he in this continuity was raised to be he crash landed in the middle of a goddamn church on his world, and the monks raised him because they saw him as he's clearly a sign from God. There's a God out there. We don't know where he's from, but this is clearly his messenger, his messiah. So Enrico was raised to be already and he already gets visions from the God Emperor already. His powers are already letting him see the God Emperor already. So he's just so he's already well, guess I'm gonna be the son of God. So when he finally met the Emperor, he was oh my God, I finally encountered my father again and all of that, and yeah, we all know how that turned out. Ironwood. Let's talk about Ironwood real fast. Ironwood in here, he was raised on Olympia, excuse me. And in here, he's much like with Arrow, where he was raised to be he was basically raised to be a general. He was raised to have the strategic mind, but at the same time, he also had this level of too much. He demanded too much from himself and his sons, when he finally reunited with the Iron Warriors, and that always became stressful, especially when the Emperor kept, riding his ass. And finally, we have Hunter, Hunter in here, he actually was not raised by wolves. He was actually raised in a village on Fenrir, and he grew up to be the Jarl of that land. But the thing is, he didn't want to be Jarl. He didn't want to be the Jarl. He wanted to be out in the wilds. So Hunter would go out into the wilds of Fenrir in the cold for weeks and just chill with wolves and hone his senses. And become more animal-like. That's why his ears were more pointed. He's got teeth. And eventually the Emperor did pick him up, and he, of course, did challenge the Emperor to a series of tests, to which he lost the last one. I was like, all right, I'm going with you. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I covered all of them. Yeah. So there you go, guys. That was just kind of a run through of the Primarchs here, and then if this does well, I'll move on to the actual Heresy itself, and possibly do the Scouring if that video does well. But yeah, so you guys tell me in the comments below, what did you guys think of this video? Comment below, let me know. Other than that, I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.